I'm excited to have everyone here today to talk about the ROI of UX, the cost of not paying attention to your users. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce you all to GlideFast Consulting and tell you a little bit about the company. Named the 2022 and 2023 ServiceNow Elite Partner of the Year. Now I'd like to introduce Tim Engstrom and David Arbor, your presenters for today's webinar. I'll pass it off to Tim.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with David Arbor, the AVP of Professional Services. I'd like to start off with talking about what is our experience going to be. So we're going to start off, we're going to talk about what ROI is. I think most people know what it is, but we'll start to discuss that as how it affects UX and how UX affects it. And we'll dive in a little bit about how you can do that. And hopefully at the end, we'll have time for some questions. So to start off, the ROI is defined by business. These are the top 5 things that most businesses are looking for, whether it's increasing revenue, decreasing costs, more market share, more revenue from existing customers, and the most important, increasing that shareholder value. These are all very important. And all of these things can be affected by the user experience. So to start off with, I love this slide. There are design-centric companies out there, and there's a company that actually monitors them. There's 16 that actually qualify to be considered a design-centric company. And in 10 years, a $10,000 investment would yield a 219% increase over that same investment in the S&P, which is huge. It shows the importance of what design can actually do, how it can influence the entire company and its standings. Time.com, they changed how their site works using the infinite scroll, and it decreased their bounce rate, which is huge. You really want to keep those people on your site, and just one small little change can really make a great impact. ESPN sat down and they listened to their users. And if your revenue jumps 35% just because you listen and take into consideration what they do, you've hit some good ROI there. Sometimes as simple as color. Color has such a powerful emotive effect on people. Taking the time to figure out which shade of blue is going to resonate most with your users. You can see Bing did it and got an $80 million boost in that. Wouldn't we all love that? So that's a good flex, right? That's a lot of how listening to your users actually can drive revenue. So how do we get there? How do we quantify this ROI with pretty pictures? Let's take a look. We have 2 sites for the same company. The one on the left looks like maybe it was built in 1995. One on the right, it looks a little bit more modern. Right off the bat, you're going to get this perception. The one on the right, in my opinion, there's a little bit of subjectivity here. It feels simpler, it feels cleaner, and you get this little bit of sense of competency there, that these people are modern, they know what they're doing. While the one on the left feels like they don't take the time to update, they're stuck in the past. You may feel that they may not keep up with the modern changes that computers are doing, and you may be hesitant to want to use them. You can see just in perception alone, dealing with design and UX can make a huge impact on whether or not someone's going to click through and engage with you. So that's where we're going to talk about a little bit of a myth here. And this always bugs me. Design is about making things look pretty. Making things look pretty is part of it, but that's not the crux of it. Design has always had intentionality. And since I have come on to GlideFast, it's been a little bit over a year that I've been here, really working to put together a program that is based on this intentionality. And part of our methodology is that we listen to the users and make sure they can enjoy the experience. Really finding delight is what I like to call it. And this really brings in the users wanting to use the site. We work to solve business problems, working with our clients to make sure that they're heard, that we understand their problems. And this next part gets a little bit tricky, but getting the users to solve those problems. And that's a huge thing. That's where we move that crux from pretty to intentional, to useful, to driving towards that ROI. ROI is going to be based around problems, especially when it comes to users and the user experience. And I have 4 examples. These come up a lot with a lot of the people that I talk to. Users are having a hard time figuring out what to do. That's a common one. Users really dislike having multiple systems and portals to work in. That's another one, especially nowadays where you get brands fighting for attention, fighting for their own brand to have a place within users' relationships, within businesses. And things are too complicated for the users. And this is huge. There's just so much noise out there. How do we break through it to make sure that we get the users to what they want to do, how to solve their problems that can solve your problems? And then employees are quiet quitting. This one may be a little bit of a stretch, but we're going to have fun with it and see if we can actually make a difference there, make an impact. But to start off, I'm going to bust that myth a little bit still about design. And now when we dive into user experience, we're talking less about making things pretty, less about the aesthetics, and more about the psychology behind it. You can do a quick search on the internet for cognitive bias and psychology as it relates to user experience, and you'll find lists of upwards of 100 or so different terms and theories and principles. And this is where you really start to see things change, things really make a matter, and where the intentionality comes in. Because we can make a pretty site for you and it will be awesome. It will be engaging. But once we start tapping into this and understanding that there is this behavioristic side of design, you really start to see differences made. You really start to see those users move through in an intentional manner. They get things done. They solve business problems. And that's what we're really here for. That's why ServiceNow is built. It's to solve problems, to solve your problems, and to be able to move forward with it. And now we're all starting on the same place. We're all starting with, whether it's Employee Center Pro, Employee Center, or Service Portal, we're starting with this great framework. It's built so strong and robust. There's so many tools in there that we love to jump in there. We love to tap into them, surface them, put them in a prioritized order. It's great. The biggest problem I see is this is a general solution. And it would be perfect if we all had the same users, if we were all doing the same business, if we all had the same problems, this would be perfect, but we don't. And that's what makes us unique. Your business is unique. Your problems are unique. So we need a unique solution that speaks to your users, that address your problems. So let's see how we can do that. So our first problem, the users are having a hard time figuring out what to do. It's a very common problem. Anytime you throw something new up at your users, you're gonna get hiccups. Like a good example is, we're probably all familiar with Facebook. Every few years or so, they do a massive redesign, and they'll throw it out there at their users, and you will just see people screaming and yelling, "Why did you change this? Why did you do this? I can't find this." It's the impact on the user is huge. To be able to go in and smooth that out, to guide them, to present things in a way that make things useful and intentional is hard. So let's look at what we can do. If we're going to solve for reducing the load on the users, what we're looking at here is a usability ROI. In this particular situation, we're looking at several things. I like to bring in a human factor. This provides a welcoming environment when the users are coming in here. This particular brand, I chose to tap into a lot of their messaging and welcome them. We are here to help. They know that this is a service portal now. They're welcome, they're brought in, and providing a twofold next step where they have the option to search for a solution or just to go right into the ticketing system to ask for assistance, followed by a nice little bar down there with specific things related to them. And you say, well, how can this really help? How are we guiding them? There's a prioritization effect here. When they come in, they see the greeting. The next two biggest sections are balancing the search, the self-help, to get their own guidance, or to jump to asking for assistance. In this specific scenario, what the client really wanted to was to get people in, get them out, and get them to understand that this is how they were going to get their help. So we prioritized the color of the button as a yellow, which is going to draw your eye. So you're having this hierarchy to get the user to go where they need to go, to get the help that they need, which helps get tickets into service desk, to prioritize them, to get them out, and to get that help that they need. So how does this affect ROI when we do this? Well, in this particular instance, I should just step back. You can see my equation down there at the bottom of what I used. All the equations that I'm using are based on an average employee cost of about $30 an hour, with the number of employees being 100. So we're looking at a recovery time of getting people in, getting what they need and getting out so that they can get back to work. This could potentially result in a savings of about $300,000 a year based on this equation. Your companies will obviously be different, but that is the goal of what we're looking for. Users really dislike having multiple systems and portals to work in. This is a real problem. In most companies, you're going to have portals for ADP, for Paylocity, for your benefits. They're going to be all over the place. Being able to minimize that where you can will really help your users out. Now, a good example of this, and to me, why Apple is a big success, is that early in the days, they created this consistency that not only for their hardware platform and how they created their operating system, but they created these human interface guidelines that they used for third-party software. They sent this out whenever they had a developer working with them to help them understand what the goal was for the platform and to build your software accordingly. And this started that role of usability, of making things human-centric. And to me, this is why Apple is so successful. It's not that they created a great platform, which they did, but they brought in this consistency. So when you're using Apple software, most of it is familiar, whether it's from a third party or Apple itself. There's going to be a lot of things that have that consistency, that feel, that sometimes even that look that will help you drive through and get you that understanding to get you in to what you need to do quicker. Beyond that, there's the nuance that is the complexity and leveling up and getting to that expertise, but getting in is smooth and it's clean and it's operatable. So as we go in to look at our portal sites, we really need to look at embracing your brand. And it's your brand that should have that consistency. When a user comes in and they know your brand, whether it's from working with your corporate site or any other portals, there should be that consistency that they know when they hit that, they know what to do, or they recognize your cues, your subtleness, the flows that you have. To me, that is where the importance comes in. So we can look at this as a result of familiarity. And this goes both ways in the fact that sometimes you don't want them on your site as much because you want them to get back to a productive work style, which is fine. But maybe on a customer service portal where you maybe want these people to come in to get more familiar with your brand, that familiarity helps them to stay in there, stay engaged with it, and feel comfortable with it. It tells a great brand story that you've created this consistency. It elevates your brand up and just elevates the company in general. So we're looking at, for this equation, so a time on portal, we're looking at when somebody comes into a portal, we're looking at approximately 60 minutes per week, and we're averaging that out with the $30 an hour cost with 100 employees. So we're looking at $3,000 per week of time spent on portals, which comes to that average of about $156,000 a year. Solutions are too complicated for our users. This one's going to be a fun one. I'm going to tap into and talk about how we leverage the psychology and cognitive bias in order to solve a lot of these problems. Now, for this one, the client needed a very simple solution. They had an intranet, they had other portals. They wanted a simple way for people to resolve their tickets, to make it as clean as possible. They wanted to reduce the effect of their fulfillers, of their support staff, start to eliminate those emails, those taps on shoulders. So we worked with them to come up with a very simple solution. But even if it's simple, there is a lot of psychology that falls behind this. You can obviously see that there's direct access to get into the tickets. There's the transparency of the My Active Items, where your requests sit. There's also a jump to password resetting, and Inner Circle is what they call their intranet. And then we've lowered the prioritization of the self-help because they really wanted to create that ticket flow. Now, for the psychology part, we start with what's referred to as Hick's Law, and we're reducing the number of decisions that a user has to make. That is a huge key in simplification. As they come here, there's not a whole lot that they feel like they can do. There is a lot in the back end. There's a lot of knowledge articles. There's a lot of stuff that they can get to, but we're reducing the load right off the front, which comes down to cognitive load. which is another cognitive bias, which is reducing the mental effort. So by simplifying it through Hick's law, reducing the number of decisions, we're easing the burden on the user. A lot of times with these support portals, with ticketing, they're coming here because they have a problem. There's already a lot on their mind. They want to get it resolved. They need to come in here and resolve it. Let's make it as friendly and simple as possible so they don't have to think, they know where to go. And then framing is another principle that I like to use, where we're presenting info in a way that helps the users make decisions. And part of this is we have a greeting up here, get the IT help you need. Now we've pulled that down and associated it with the request help button, which is part of their brand color, yellow. So you have this tie-in of they need to come here to get help. There's the button with a close tie to it. We're framing those two really close together to get that cognitive balance so that they know, oh, this is the help I need. I'm going to go here. Now that yellow button is also based off of a cognitive principle called the von Restorff effect. And people notice items that stand out more. Now, because we're driving the users to these tickets by using the von Restorff effect on this button, that's your primary focus. It's associated with everything, but it really pops out and helps to solve this business problem. And then we come with the aesthetic usability effect. And this is the perception that designs with greater aesthetics are easier to use. So keeping it clean, tapping into their brand, humanizing it a little bit, we're really looking at creating that perception that this is going to be so easy to use. We're, again, coming back to reducing that cognitive load where they're not having to think. They're going to feel a little bit more relaxed as they come in and present their problems. And then the last part is the familiarity bias. By tapping into the brand, we're creating a comfortable place for them. They're familiar with it. It's hitting into that consistency so that they know what the buttons are. We're using the squared off buttons. We're using the pop out icon so that they know what it's going to be. So they're not having to relearn as they come in. All of this results in creating a great workflow that will help drive the users through in a way that resolves business problems and satisfies the user's needs. By doing this effectively, we can potentially save upwards of $312,000 a year based on, this is what I like to call a 4 hours a week problem solving issue with your $30 an hour at 100 employees. He said the results may vary based off of your actual numbers, but you get an idea of how this user experience is affecting your bottom line. Now, this is the fun one. People are quiet quitting. It's a global phenomenon. Is it really that bad? Well, a disengaged employee can cost around $3,400 out of every $10,000 of an employee's salary. So we're looking at a third of their cost is being lost because they are not engaged. This is huge. Do we really want to lose that money? So how can we do it? Well, what's great about ServiceNow's platform, especially Employee Center Pro, is there are so many features, so many widgets. There's content delivery that, yes, I think you'll find this is a fully functional intranet, which leads to the unified approach to communication and information and ticketing. Why don't we go down this road? So let's look at it here. So if we were to create an internet, there is a lot of features that we can focus on bringing it in. We can create delight, really bring in aspects of your brand that are pleasing and really speak to your users. Humanizing effects. I love to bring in faces, especially if they're from your users. That really helps bring them in. It causes a connection to it. One of the big things about Employee Center is their content delivery system, whether it's their banner section that will bring in, you can do specialized content that you can target different roles, different departments, different locations, and really speak to them. And when you're speaking to your users on a specific level and not just generally to the entire company, their eyes open a little bit. They're going to be more engaged. Creating a platform that has access to things that they request, as well as upcoming events that they may be interested in, all will drive forward to, it's not necessarily going to solve engagement, but creating that effort between the company and the employee will start to drive that up. They will feel like they're included and that they're part of something. And a lot of times that's what they're looking for. Are you talking to them? Are you engaging with them? Are you trying? So when we're looking at engaged productivity, if we can boost them upwards of that 18%, which is what we're looking at in the drop, boost that 18%, get that back, $1.15 million in savings, that's wonderful. Let's bring that on. Or if we can reduce turnover. Turnover is huge. It costs so much. It's 125% of an employee's salary is what it costs to get them in and train them and find them. And we're looking at approximately 30% of your workforce year over year has the potential. So if we can reduce that, that's money in your pocket. And a lot of that does happen with the user experience. I always like to say, like, yes, we can do it digitally, but user experience is everywhere. It's face-to-face, it's in your offices, but just starting, creating that effort, having a platform like this is a great way to enable that connection, enable that engagement, and to provide that effort towards your people. And I do like to look at this. For every dollar spent on UX, companies see up to $100 return. It is a great investment. It's an investment in people. And people are your asset. They're the ones who are doing the work. So if we can make things as easy as possible for them, effortless for them, if we provide that engagement, we will start to see these returns. But we have to ask why. Why are we doing it? Why are we going through all this effort? Well, for one, it's the bar is being raised outside of the industry. Whether it's people are using Uber in their normal lives, Starbucks, Lemonade, Duolingo, Yelp, they are all creating these great user experiences. These are the experiences that your users are desiring to use intentionally by themselves. They're choosing to use these. Now, the thing is, in work, we think that we have a captive audience and they just have to use it in order to get those benefits. But why? Why do we need to stop there? If we want to elevate our brand, if we want to have potential employees seek us out, we need to present an experience to them that resonates what they choose to use on the outside. Now, the cost of not utilizing good UX, there is user experience regardless. You don't have a choice. There is always going to be a user experience. It's whether or not you choose to invest in creating a good one or letting it sit. If you don't invest in it, you could have disappointed customers and users. Your sales could be lower. There could be increased development time, bad brand reputation, decreased motivation of employees. There is a lot that goes on. Some of the stories that I've dug up in looking at this and companies not taking the right actions to create this user experience, like Google Glass. For me, Google is really great at pushing things out there and seeing how consumers react. So Google Glass, for instance, a really good idea, but they were missing some points that really affected the user adoption. For one, there was the aesthetics. It was weird looking. Who would want to wear this on their face? There's the expectations of, why do I want this? Hardware doesn't sell hardware. Software sells hardware, or experiences sell hardware. So by not walking people through how this is going to affect their lives, there's no connection there. And the last part of that is privacy. When people saw somebody walking around with Google Glass, they could recognize that as an interface device. They felt like they were being recorded. There was a huge backlash from the community who did not understand, and it really drove Google to, I could be wrong, I think they may have abandoned it or have gone back to the drawing board because of a lot of the feedback that they got from non-users. And then probably one of my most favorite stories is Walmart. They came out with a one-question survey. Now, I love one-question surveys. They can do a lot. You can get a lot of feedback because it's simple for your users to just answer one question. The problem was the question that they asked. It's, would you like Walmart to be less cluttered? There are so many things wrong with that statement when it comes to asking users for their opinion. Part of it is it was negatively framed. You would never want to answer that yes. I mean, does anybody ever want anything cluttered? It's just not good. And it was able to be answered with a yes or a no. Most user-based questions, you want them to be a little bit more open-ended to get them to answer it for you, not telling them how to answer. Now, of course, in the end, they got a ton of yes, we want Walmart less cluttered. Now, because of this, they actually went in and put a program in place to go through and declutter all of their stores, but they lost sight of what made Walmart unique. It was their diversity. It was the amount of stuff that they had. They actually lost $1.85 billion because of this program based off of that single question. They didn't ask the right questions. They didn't listen to their users properly. So how do we get there? I'm going to bring David on, and he's going to talk about some of our process and how we get there.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, so I guess we're going to talk real quick about sort of our workflow and how Tim's, how the developers and architects and whatnot work with the design team here at GlideFast to really, bring these things to life. We'll start with metrics, right? Good data equals greater design. One of the things that the design team does when it comes to the perfect or best design for a customer is ask questions. And so the answers to those questions are everything, right? That drives how the design, how your users are using the tool and ultimately where the design goes. So asking those questions and having answers to those questions and answers that are not guessing, will lead to a design much quicker and a build that's much quicker and a better user experience overall. And that goes to user surveys as well, right? So talking to your users, making sure your users, they have what they need and what they really need to interact with the system. I'm guilty of this as well. We think we know what our users want, right? Going into something, it's we want it to look a specific way, or we want this really cool feature that I'm seeing in websites these days. But then you come find out that that's not what your users need at all. They may need something completely different. So user surveys and actually information from your users is super important when it comes to building the right design. And then empathy, again, asking questions of users, but also putting yourself in those users' shoes. Sometimes with technical, and again, I'm speaking from a technical perspective here too, right? Not a designer perspective, but from a technical perspective, I know that I think very technically, and it's very hard to put yourself in somebody's shoes, of a user's shoes that's not thinking technically. But that's what designers do. That's why we have a design team. That's really why they've come into, or why we've started this program to get to what our users or what our customers actually need rather than what they think they need. So at GlideFast, we have what's called the designed experience. And this is the experience, the good UX that we give you, the customer, when we're trying to get to your good UX. So we have an experience for you to lead to your good UX. And as we use workshops, so we'll have design workshops where the questions will come up of your users. Tim and his team will ask the users, will ask questions to get the users to understand what the users, how they're using it, and where their pain points are really, and also how we're going to address business requirements and goals and just big picture outcomes. Right. So if we build something that's super beautiful and super effective, but it doesn't actually meet your outcomes, then it's probably not going to be sold very well on your side. So we need to make sure we're hitting all of those points as well. And then conversation about use cases, how you're using the tool now or how you've used the tool in the past, and where the gaps are that we need to fill. After all that's done, after we've had a design workshop, there's iteration, right? There's back and forth iteration from our design team with the client, or possibly even the client's design team. They may have a design team as well. There's iteration back and forth until we get to a point where we have a desired design, and the design that we feel and the customer feels is going to be the best design moving forward. And that's handed off to our development team, and our development team then comes in, continues to work with the design team, right, to build what they've designed, but also as things come up that may need slight tweaks or changes, they're working with the design team the whole way and the customer to make sure that at the end of the day, the design that we're delivering is exactly what the customer needs. And all of this, how quickly we get in prior to having a design team here, and I know that this is true in other organizations as well. If we hand over a design, not even a design, but some requirements to somebody who's technical, who's building, actively doing the work and building our ServiceNow implementation, a lot of times that's going to result in something that we may think is going to be very usable and have a great experience. At the end of the day, it doesn't. So it's happened many, many times, but in my experience only, I've seen it happen many, many times. So one of the ways that we get you to a quicker ROI this way is design experience can be very quick, right? We're not designing in ServiceNow, we're designing in a tool that we can iterate on very quickly and change the designs on very quickly. So we're not actually going in and building anything in ServiceNow at that point. We don't start building in ServiceNow until we have the design that we need. And so what that does is makes our development time for your experience much shorter than it would if we were going at it from more of a technical perspective. So GlideHits is our public-facing portfolio of portals that we've built. Employee Center portal, there's customer service portals, HR portals, there's all sorts of things in here that we have to show you guys. We've removed some branding off of them so that we're not showing off anything for our clients. But this is where you can go at that website that you see down at the bottom right there to actually see some things that we've done internally. And this is being updated constantly. If you have any questions, please reach out. If there's anything that you see that maybe you think might be good for you or your company, but also we can, obviously these designs were specific to customers, and we got to these designs with customers with this design experience. Your design will likely be a little bit different, but this is good for inspiration. And yeah, please visit. We like showing our work. And I think this brings us to the question period.
Awesome.
All right.
There are a couple questions in the chat, I think, for you guys. So let's see what we've got.
Cool.
How does the ROI of UX compare to other investment areas such as marketing or technology development?
That's a good question. I would almost say that all of those can be influenced by user experience, because marketing, it comes down to working with people. You're trying to influence people. If you can understand the behaviorisms behind that, you're creating a UX for the marketing. Same for everywhere else. Everywhere that is touched by people can be influenced by good UX.
Here's another one for you guys. Are there any specific tools or methodologies that can assist in assessing the ROI of UX projects?
There are many. ServiceNow actually has its own analytics system that runs in the background. I am a huge fan of data. Anytime that we can get data really helps us drive that, what I call uninfluenced behavior of the users, whether it's their time on site, their click-throughs, how many are coming in, uniques versus returns. Those are all huge because they're not being influenced by, I guess, people. This is their actual actions. Other parts of it are user surveys, just being able to ask them questions to figure out how they use it, why they want to use it, what their expectations are, is a great way to do it. There are also a lot of other tools, like a Hotjar is a really good one. It provides heat mapping so you can see where they're lingering around a site, where they're tending to go. There are a ton of tools that we recommend, but just data in general, any data you can get helps build a more robust user experience.
What are some potential long-term benefits that organizations can expect from prioritizing UX and measuring its ROI?
Well, some of the benefits, anytime that you engage with your users, when you present that effort of trying to create a better experience, you're creating that bond with them. You're bringing them in, you're asking their opinion, you're presenting something to them that they want to use. So you're hitting it on a lot of different levels. You're hopefully creating that consistency so that they have a smooth experience, they're familiar with it, they don't want to go anywhere else. They're comfortable here, they're engaged. So hopefully we're lifting that 18% of lost engagement by providing something with that effort that you want to provide for them. So long-term, the more you put into user experience, the greater return, whether it's your users, your customers, your employees, you will see a huge return, even if it's a human return of smiles in the office. That is huge.
How does the role of developers evolve or change when working with design-centric solutions compared to traditional development methods?
We typically develop in an agile manner, based on that, what we do, unless the customer has a different manner that they'd like to develop in. But agile means you're always iterating, you're always making slight changes, and to the things that you're building as you go along. And if you're doing that, if you're building a UI than UX for sure, because it's actually the build portion. But if your UI is an iterative process that you're building in an agile way, back and forth with the customer, right? Hey, I've made this change to the UI. Let's look at it as a team in our Scrum, in the end of our sprint. and see what it looks like and see if we need to make changes. That's far less efficient than having a design up front that we've already all agreed upon is going to be the best path forward. And we could put the work and the hours into something that we know is going to be good, rather than something that we're going to have to iterate on, into the future. So that changed the workflow completely, right? When we have that design versus we just have stories or requirements to go on based on business needs. Hope that answers the question.
Can you provide insights into how to create a business case for investing in UX, considering the ROI perspective?
Yes, definitely. There are a lot of stats. There's a lot of data that supports the process for UX and validating that it is useful and that it actually returns a lot. Like I said, I do talk a lot about the human factor and how we create this engagement, we create this delight, and we create happy users. But there's also the side where we look at from a business perspective of how does this affect the bottom line, whether it's from like the equations I had earlier in the webinar where we're talking about reducing time on site, we're increasing workflow stability, we're creating consistency. All of those help leverage that bottom line, whether it's, well, let's look at it this way. There was a study done by the University of California, Irvine, that talked about distractions. And the number that they came up with for every distraction that an employee encounters is 23.6 minutes of recovery time to get back to work. So if a user encounters a problem, they're going to have to solve it. So they've been distracted, they're away from their productivity, they're having to go into a portal. The quicker that we can remove this block to get them satisfied that their problem is on the road to recovery, we can get them back to work. There may still be that recovery time, but we're reducing the amount of time it gets to that recovery time to get them back into that perfect workflow. So to me, that's one of the hugest things when it comes to business requirements and the value of UX.
Someone also asked a follow-up question, Tim, to one of your responses before. Is there a specific site with information about which colors elicit which emotional response you had mentioned? Or do you have a tool that you use to find out that information?
I can't think of a specific one off the top of my head, and that gets a little bit sticky. If you're mostly US based, colors are going to have a very specific meaning. But once you hit globally, that's where things really start to get sticky, and you really have to be careful because colors mean different things in different cultures. So a lot of it is, it's like, look at your brand palette and start to go through it. And I would almost look at it specifically color-wise and do a search for how does this color respond, or find the emotive quality for this color across the globe. And a lot of times that will bring up, whether or not, people in France respond to purple as a royalty, whereas in China, purple could mean something completely the opposite. So it's just a matter, I don't have a specific spot for that because it is kind of a little bit all over the place and there's a lot of diversity, but the tools are out there specifically for that.
What are the specific ways in which design-centric solutions influence the overall software development lifecycle?
It changes the entire flow, right? So rather than building things and coming back and iterating on those things that we've now built in ServiceNow, which may take an entire sprint, we're building things in Adobe XD, which take very little time. And actually, I've been on multiple projects with Tim, actually, where Tim has moved things around and changed things live for the client to look at. So it's not even like, let me take this away and come back in a couple of days, but it's let's make these changes right now so you can see them. So that changes the flow completely. Rather than that iteration back and forth, we're just iterating in very small amounts of time to ultimately pass on that design and something that we already know that we're going to want or that we need at the end of the day.
How to evaluate technical debt versus design impact and value to make a cost-effective decision?
So actually, this is where we come into that relationship, that symbiosis between design and development. I like to work really closely with the development to make sure, because there in ServiceNow, in the portals, there is this terminology of out of the box. And we like to maintain that out of the box because that maintains the upgradability, the maintenance that goes along with it. So I like to push things as far as I can, styling wise, to match your brand, to please your users, to create these great workflows. And by working with the development team, I can understand how far I can push it while still maintaining that out of the box. So it is that a little bit of technical debt, but if we incur that upfront while still maintaining that out of the box, I think there is a huge importance in that symbiotic relationship to work together closely, so we don't get too much of a technical debt.
Yeah, great point. And to add to that, what Tim's getting at too, with the not incurring technical debt, means we're not going to go in and customize widgets unless we absolutely have to, right? Because those widgets now become something you own and you have to maintain going forward, and that they're not going to get updates, whenever you get an upgrade from ServiceNow. So what we'll do is build styling on top of the styling that already exists in that portal or in that employee center instance. And so our designers come at the problem from that angle, right? Like, we'll tell the customer, hey, we can build you something completely custom, but you're going to be incurring this technical debt and it's going to take this amount of time. Or we can build you this design that we have here, which is, working within the boundaries that we have, that the platform gives us, and a lot less technical debt, but also getting to the design that you need and require.
Awesome. I'd say that probably brings us to our last question too. Can you provide examples of how design-centric solutions have improved the efficiency or effectiveness of software development projects?
I think about a project that we actually worked on together, Tim, with a customer, where we were iterating back and forth with the design, gave the customer a few different design options, and went through this entire process, the design experience. And I believe what the customer said to us at the end of the meeting was that his heart was aflutter with the design that he was seeing right in front of his face, because we'd gone through this process and talked to the users for that organization, and there was excitement about the design and what they were going to be getting at the end of the day, right? Because all they had seen was an out of the box. I think that this was Employee Center, actually. All they had seen was the out of the box Employee Center, which is great, but I think whenever you get that emotional response from the customer, they become even that much more involved and that much more invested in the end product. And I think it makes the whole thing go smoother across the board, right? Every time you show back to them, they understand that's exactly what I asked for. You're giving me what I need and what I asked for here. It just makes the process smooth, much smoother across every aspect.
Amen to that.
Actually, we did just get one more question that came in. If a company is using Employee Center or Employee Center Pro already, you will develop design with that framework and portals. We have 4 portals using Employee Center Pro.
Oh, yeah. Intention of Employee Center is to bring everything together, everything internal together into one portal. I'm not sure about the statement about having 4 portals using Employee Center Pro, because Employee Center Pro, again, the intention is to have a taxonomy that you can now build that spans multiple areas that would have been covered by multiple portals, but is now all in one portal. So yeah, we absolutely go at it. If we know this is going to be Employee Center, we're actually pushing every customer now for internal portals to go Employee Center, because there's no reason not to, right? Employee Center is based on the same technology. It just adds, we just get extra things. So if we're talking about a net new implementation here, a portal, we're going to absolutely recommend and push Employee Center. If it's an existing portal and you want to combine multiple portals into one Employee Center implementation so that you have more of like an intranet, then by all means, that's what we specialize in. We can absolutely do that for you. And we do design from that perspective, yes.
Awesome. Thanks, David. And you can also find the Glide Hits link. Our link, it's off of the glidefast.com website as well. I think those are all the questions that we had. Thank you everyone today for joining, and a big thank you to Tim and David from GlideFast for presenting today's webinar, the ROI of UX. Today's session was recorded and will be sent to all of you in a follow-up email right as we get it. And any other questions that arise, please reach out to info@glidefast.com and we will do our best to answer any and all questions you have. Thank you and have a great rest of your week.